Hey everybody, it's What is Comics? I'm Jamie Jones with my co-host, as always, Matt Sardo. This is the official Indie Comics Creator Con podcast. Hey Matt, what is Indie Comics Creator Con?
Oh my goodness. We have a guest tonight. We have Jacob White, bell ringer. I have a really special connection with this gentleman, and it's been so exciting to watch his journey since the first IC3, and I can't wait till he comes back to the second one, and it's beautiful stuff.
I was surprised. I did not know that IC3 was his first show, and that he has grown and become this kind of monolith of of a creator in the last year. That's really exciting. That was really special to talk about his journey in the last year, and then talk to him now. It's exciting. It's God. This whole thing.
It got a little misty-eyed in the room,
dude. It's wild, wild. Very exciting.
So, but this is what Indie Comics Creator Con brings to the table, and this is why I want you guys to come to the show on March 15th. We have 170 creators coming to town. Jim Rugg, Tom Scioli, Dean Haspel are the headliners. Ken Landgraf. There's gift bags for the first 100 people attending the show. We have a scavenger hunt with an amazing prize that we're going to make a drink and draw the night before. There's portfolio reviews. Tickets are only $8. Go to indiecomicscreatorcon.com for all the details. Get your tickets. Show up.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It is in New Haven, Connecticut.
That's an important detail.
That's an important detail that we should mention.
There's free parking.
There's free parking in New Haven, Connecticut. We have sponsors. We have sponsors for the show that we need to talk about.
Comics Wellsprings, the title sponsor. Cosmic Lion Productions. They have Cosmic Lion Island at the show. Dark Horse Comics put some swag in the bags. Monkeys Fighting Robots for all your comic book reviews. And New Haven's Alternate Universe. That comic shop is the one in town, and they have to be a partner, and they are, and they're amazing. And now that we're part of the Comics Art family, check out their YouTube channel, Comic Art Live, and also check out the app, Comic Art Fans. Go to Google Play or the iTunes Store, download it, create a gallery, connect with Jamie and I. A lot of really cool stuff going on there. But we should probably talk to. I was like, we probably should talk to Wesley. But that's what's on the written there.
That was last week. We should probably talk to Jake. That's what we should do. Matt, let's go.
I have so many random things. It's a lot of different tape rolls, and then the tape rolls, as you use them, they get smaller, right?
Yeah.
They start at a certain size. And because I'm always making stuff and have my model shop is kind of in my drawing studio, so it's a lot of tape rolls, and then whatever bowl I happen to hold my bells in for whatever amount of time that I need them held in, because I don't have enough containers.
Yeah. So you have a model shop, and you're making models of do you make models of literally everything?
So it's kind of weird. I don't make models of anything that's actually in the books.
Okay.
It's like once it's immortalized in ink, I don't want to make it. So
okay.
And any time that I make it, like for instance, this guy, I have them lying around everywhere. But this one, because I made it, I want to draw it. It's kind of weird.
Sure.
Very weird back and forth. But yeah, I'm doing a lot of both. And
so you don't make the things you draw, but the things you make, you want to draw.
Yeah. Pretty much every time. It's the same.
Interesting. Because I've seen your setup. I've seen what it looks like, and I've seen the iterations of your setup as it goes on. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you have that one in Bell Ringer. You have this one character that has a giant bell on top of him, and you actually have a model of him, correct?
He's 12 and a half feet tall.
That's insane. This is a wild thing. So you're building the model, which is probably great for you because you can do. This is now in the weeds, and a question that I will always ask: do you photograph it and then bring it into Photoshop and then trace it so it's exactly the model, or are you just freehanding off of a figure? Or
totally just freehand? And well, I'm sure we'll talk about this. I am not a
Oh, we're
trained,
talking about it now. Hey, guess what? A podcast started.
not a trained artist at all.
Yeah.
I'm a novelist first and foremost, and then
Okay.
I was an athlete, a pre-pro track athlete for years. So I traveled around training and then writing like crazy.
Yeah.
And long story short, like I came up with this idea, drew the character, and then just exploded. I could not stop. I couldn't stop building them. I couldn't stop drawing them. I realized this isn't going to be a novel. I'm going to have to figure out how to do this. And my art process, like because of that, I think is sometimes I trace, like if you get a really good figure that I'm just sketching on a piece of paper, I'll slap it against the window and use the window as my whiteboard. But when it comes to the models themselves, it's kind of strange. It's almost like there's a schematic up there where once I build it, I'm like, oh, the board sits here and the edge goes there. And my understanding of perspective and stuff is very limited. It's okay. I try to go as far as I can. So I hope they look good, but it's never as formal as like taking pictures and doing a direct one-to-one. Sometimes I might look at a photo for reference real quick, but yeah.
Well, you don't have to take a photo if you have the actual thing sitting in front of you. It's so much easier to just like, you're doing figure drawing every day because it's there. So you don't have a model of the silent bell ringer. This is very interesting to me. So everything else has models and everything's built around, but this like bell ringer character, this I cannot remember his name.
Aspero.
Aspero?
Yeah.
Okay. That was what it is. I read the whole thing today, so it's all in my mind. But the silent bell ringer Aspero has no model. So you just made that in your mind. And then you made a bunch of bell ringers for yourself, and then you're also making all of the villains, all of the bad guys, all of the monster stuff, and then sticking it into the world with photo reference. That's a good way to do it, I think.
It's great. I think what happened was I started drawing the main guy, right? And I iterated him. Maybe it wasn't very many times, maybe 3 or 4 times. And again, I'm not super precious about drawing, I think, because I didn't train to want to do this. So I'm okay with just throwing 7 character ideas out and seeing kind of what sticks and what looks the best and what evokes what I need it to evoke. And for him, it was, damn, these joints just don't work. Like I have to draw these 7 different ways. I'm just going to make them magnetic balls and just color them black so I can draw them as fast as possible. And then kind of move those cylinders in a way that it works well.
But the fact that you're even thinking about it being a magnetic ball, like you're thinking about it as if it is an actual thing, is more than I think a lot of people, right? Like I don't think about it that way. Like I have drawn characters, done stuff, and then I have made maquettes of the baboon, and I've so I can turn them around and make sure the cloak folds the right way. But for the most part, I'm not thinking about him in terms of like, this is where the joint is and this is what's going on.
I think again, because I'm not trained, I can't draw people at all. Like I grew up drawing creatures, monsters. Like I've been calling the bell ringer style like back of the homework with a ballpoint pen style.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to do my best in rendering what I can. I try to challenge myself each story with a specific thing. Like we're going to try to be more graphic here and use lots of black or this and that. But when it came to drawing, I guess the character himself, it was let's make this as simple as we can. And I wanted him to be cute and stout and functional. I wanted him to look functional because some of the other Bell Knights don't. If you made them in real life, they wouldn't work. They wouldn't work. And I think because of that, I can't build him because now I'm so precious about how perfect he would actually have to function that I can't build.
Oh, that's great.
So we have to take like a few, like tons of steps back.
Yeah.
Because now we're all in the bell ringer universe, but we have to like bring people.
Yeah, no one knows what it is.
All the way back. I mean, I read it all. And I still have no clue what's going on, but that's a good thing. Where are you from?
All right, so
what I thought. I knew there was like a Pennsylvania thing going on.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so you grew up in the same place, like went to high school everywhere.
Yeah. I grew up in Aliquippa, which is super hardcore football country, and around 30 minutes outside the city. And my mom is a choreographer. She's the executive producer of the Pittsburgh Playhouse. So I grew up around concert dance, traveling for concert dance and everything. So I was lucky that I got a pretty big introduction to fine arts and like really high level art early. But on top of that, it was really lucky for me when I started to get into comics because of kayfabe. And you step in any bookstore in the city or any comic shop, and it is, filled with really good stuff.
We're a different age group, but like, did Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood still resonate when you were a kid? Since he's from
my mom worked on his show when she was younger.
This is incredible.
Yeah, I need more info. I need more.
Yeah.
My mom worked. It's
not like a crazy big deal, but because of things that my mom has done, she did a lot of education work with his show, especially towards the end or like when he started to get older. She would do some things here and there, but when she was around my age, like 20 to 26. But yeah, Mr. Rogers was and still is sort of the king of the city outside of sports.
That's interesting.
This is why backstories are important, Jamie.
This is why, and you hit something that I'm really interested in. I love Mr. Rogers. I love this stuff.
So your mom was supportive of your art and your creative ventures and everything.
And never for a second wasn't. I grew up in I love my dad. He was supportive, but he wasn't. She's fantastic. Like my mother grew up with nothing. I mean, she slept in the same bed as her sisters until she was 19. And then said, I want to be a dancer, and then blew her knee out and then switched and said, I'm going to become a choreographer. So that's probably when she was around my age. She had me when she was 26. I'm 26 now. And it was kind of amazing growing up because I watched her kind of go from like owning a local dance studio in the city, which she was known for, to working on some TV stuff here and there for educational stuff for the Civic Light Opera in Pittsburgh, which is where Mr. Rogers and stuff comes in. And then the older that I got and started traveling with her, I started recognizing, oh, wow, her work towards art, even in a city like Pittsburgh, which is relatively small, you can do whatever you want so long as you're really willing to bust your butt. And she's also a good person, which helps. So she was always super supportive of me and my brother to the point where, do you guys want to go to school this week or do you want to come to Chicago with me at Jazz Dance World Congress and watch a bunch of dancers?
Yeah. This is an interesting tether that I have talked to several cartoonists, Chris Schweitzer in Kentucky. I mean, even far back as like Will Eisner in New York, whose parents work in theater and in the arts. Chris Schweitzer's parents worked at the Kentucky Opera and the Kentucky Orchestra, and his father was a set builder. And Eisner's parents, or Eisner's dad, was a set builder, set painter during the Depression.
I'm a set builder.
Same. So I come from a theater background. I was an actor for 10 years before I got into comics, right? And the kind of similarities between like what comics are and what theater is. I am of the belief personally that comics are more like theater than they are like film. And
I see it.
In just like the way that you're staging stuff, it's not like a movie. I think oftentimes we think of camera angles as film, but you still have that stagnant point of view. It's like, here's the horizon, here's where the characters are standing, and staging and set building. In your work, specifically in Bellringer, you have very like static pieces in the background and static pieces in the foreground, and then the main character is like interacting in this set space. I have no thought. Talk to this.
No, that is.
How are you determining where this character like sits in space? Is that something that you're considering?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a trained artist. No, I don't think many people are trained artists.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And also, the majority of cartoonists are not trained artists, right?
Yeah. People are just self-educating in whichever way they see fit. Scholars of the image, so to speak, and not to be pretentious, but
this is the show to be pretentious. Listen, Matt's not pretentious. I'm pretentious as all get out. So
I can be
you
a little
can be
bit both.
pretentious all you want.
I guess the approach was pretty early, and I promise this ties back to what we're going to talk about. But I didn't know anything about comics. I read one comic when I was 15, and it was some random Planet of the Apes that I picked up at the Steel City Con. And I remember reading it going, I don't like this. And then I put it away. And then I started traveling for this fantasy short story series that I used to write online. And I started going to a lot of conventions. And then I started getting into like online RPGs, TTRPGs, zines, basically, like zine books.
Yeah.
Started realizing those artists were drawing graphic novels, got really obsessed with the weird artsy work, especially a lot of stuff from the UK, like really gothic, creepy stuff. So when this idea came to me, Bellringer, I took all of those influences into consideration. This was over like a 2-year period, maybe like between me being 20 and 22. And then I was 24 when I started Bellringer. So a couple of years of maybe waiting, I grabbed a stack of random indie books. I went to a couple shops here in Pittsburgh, started watching kayfabe, all within like a 2-month period. I drew the main character, took all those other influences into consideration, started buying a bunch of stuff in bulk, and then started studying. And I took away 2 things from that. It was, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know anything about this, and it is so beautiful and so complicated. And why haven't I been doing this since I was a kid? Like, why haven't I been reading this stuff?
Yeah.
Why didn't I have stacks and stacks of comic books? And then 2, I really, really, really want to do this. And I'm just going to kind of go at it with my own style and see if it looks okay after I scan the pages in and then upload them and see if it looks okay. And I think the static imagery comes from, I really wanted to convey scale and drama. And I hope it works, because I think a lot of my art can be pretty rudimentary, especially in a lot of like my line work and stuff is very sketchy and dry and can look really messy. But I want it to look, when you look at it, you get that sense of, oh God, he's just this little tiny 4-inch guy. And there's a massive waterfall with this thing poking out of it. And yeah, and I think all of it comes from trying to study those books as much as I could and seeing, with my limitations, is this possible? And then realizing people were doing this with zines, with their own art, and I could totally try it.
Yeah.
And so Jamie and I were kind of talking about Bellringer, and like, you know, I bring my baggage to the table and he has his like baggage that he brings. And so we kind of come up with like ideas of like where we think these influences are coming from. And so like, I'm like, okay, is this, you know, Jim Henson, or is it, you know, Guillermo del Toro, or, and then Jamie chimes in with,
and I'm like, it's Dark Souls and Hollow Knight, baby. And that's where it lives. Yeah.
All 4.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
And like, I think the biggest one for me is that I've been searching for a story where I force this on everything I do, the interdisciplinary aspect, right? So if I'm writing a novel, I end up building things for it. I end up making things for it. I think it might come from playing D&D for so long with my friends. And I stopped playing maybe like 4 years ago just with life. But I played with the same group of guys forever. And we would tell really intimate, like we played a little unconventionally. It was more, you know, we'd like cry at the table. And it was much more about the story than the rules. We didn't really care about the stuff. We played from the time we were 14 to 23, 24. And I would make things nonstop for that. Always making miniatures, maquettes, painting, terrain, everything. So then when I started writing novels, I couldn't stop with it. And totally lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
How many novels do you have written? That's a good question.
Okay, none published, but I've written like 7-ish, give or take.
That's what? Are you kidding me? That's wild. So I come from a writing background as well.
Mm-hmm.
I went and have I have a degree in writing, which I don't necessarily means nothing. It was a way for me to be able to get. It was a way for me to get an English degree without having to write literature papers.
That's what it means.
Yeah, and but from that, I learned a bunch about writing, and I learned a bunch about things. For the audience and for anybody, is there any books that you're like super jazzed on for writing as like a fundamental thing? Do you have anything that you're like, this is my go-to, this is kind of this is the way?
In terms of like reading a piece and being inspired by it, or an actual
I guess I'm at either, both.
Yeah.
But
I really love classic fantasy that isn't. I mean, I love Tolkien, but not necessarily Tolkien.
Yeah.
My wife, I just got married.
Congratulations.
She's wonderful. The Last Unicorn is a big thing in her life.
Yeah.
Huge one for me. And I had never read it until I met her. And that has changed my perspective on everything.
Interesting.
But when I was younger, there was a book or a series called the Bartimaeus Trilogy.
Okay.
And it is fantasy, YA, but written with a literary bend. The author's from London, so there's a little more of that English
yeah.
Potential to the prose.
Yes.
And his
good. Wait, let me stop you. I'm sorry. Good way to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He, as a kid, me and my friends read the entire library. Like, we were the typical gifted kids who like hated the world because we thought we were the smart, and we would go to the library and we read the entire library outside of one little section. And I picked up this book when I was 11, like right at the end of that library thing, and I had not touched it because the cover was so crazy cool that I was like, I'm going to save that for the end of 5th grade. I'm going to save it. And then I ended up missing it, and I had to read it in the 6th grade because of, your kid.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring it up is it inspired me really heavily because Jonathan Stroud wrote the book so that it is both in 3rd person and 1st person, a la A Name in the Wind or Name of the Wind, except it's about a boy who summons like a genie, like a spirit, who forces that genie to work for him via the laws of magic or whatever. Except that genie is several thousand years old and is really tired of this kid. And his chapters are from the 1st person. So it's like a 45-year-old man speaking about how much he hates this kid and then switching and having to follow the kid. Yes. And my brain could not handle how incredible that was, because the 1st person POV in those books has footnotes, like nonstop footnotes.
Oh, interesting.
Going into like explicit detail as to why he can't stand the kid or why he's so smart compared to the kid, or like it. If you ever get the chance, highly recommend it. The Bartimaeus Trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. It blew my mind with what.
Yeah, I'll definitely look it up because
so good.
That sounds great. Oh man,
you've kind of stayed in the fantasy genre for writing.
Yeah. I couldn't stop writing fantasy, and it's a mix of like super hardcore fantasy stuff and super high fantasy, super epic fantasy. This is sort of where my mind always goes. And I remember my train of thought from before.
There you go.
Bring it in.
It goes into this. I could not stop doing interdisciplinary stuff because I was obsessed with building Legos. I was obsessed with whittling. Like, I spent so much time outside whittling, and I had this really specific game I would play with my friends where we'd make nests out of leaves, and then we would wait for these little fairies to come live in them, and then we would like rear them like they were our little friends or little animals. And we just played these kind of games my entire childhood. So fantasy was the only thing my mind went to. Bellringer's the first time that I felt capable as a man to do what my little kid self always wanted to do.
That's really interesting. I resonate with that in terms of a lot of like creating stuff now, where I tend to think of the stuff that I make as little boy comics. Like the baboon is what?
In the best way.
Yeah. It's just like, this is little boy comics. This is what I'm trying to make. And even now moving kind of away from from the baboon and the action adventure style of that particular book, the kind of magic and recognition of writing something for an audience that is younger but still with the weight of the world put upon it, right? I think there's a lot of stuff now that steers away from this is for children, therefore it can't talk about death, or therefore it can't talk about the realities of the world. Kids understand that. Harkening back to Jim Henson, right? That's his whole thing. If it doesn't scare you as a kid, who do you go to talk? Like The Labyrinth or The Dark Crystal. Interviews with Jim Henson about those books were very much like, or about those films were about, well, this is scary for children. And he goes, yeah, it's supposed to be. That way they can go and like experience fear and hardship, and then go out into the world and experience what fear and hardship actually is. That this is something that I attach to greatly.
No, me too.
Yeah,
100%. It's almost, we tell stories so that we can experience. Brandon Sanderson has this interesting little moment where he, in a podcast I listened to a few weeks ago, he mentioned how, and I completely agree, we tell stories and experience stories so that we can get a snippet of that experience without actually having to endure it, so that we can hopefully gain some sort of empathy for it and then become better because of it, whether we're challenging our train of thought or challenging what we thought we could overcome or challenging what we thought other people could overcome, thus allowing us to think what we can do. And I love scary stuff, and Henson, all of that. Dark Souls was a huge one. My little brother got Dark Souls when he was 10, because in 2011 we walked into a GameStop and my adorable little brother said, "Hey, do you have anything like Skyrim?" And this moron at the counter handed him Dark Souls. Handed this innocent young man Dark Souls. And like, it's actually kind of cool because we've been playing it since the beginning, but
yeah,
I never played it. I just watched, and I got to experience the empathy without ever having to be defeated.
Yeah, without having the onslaught of destruction. I just this past year beat Dark Souls 1 for the first time.
Okay.
I had bounced off of it several times, and I have become victorious, and I live
Good for you.
to tell the tale. But so back to Bellringer, it seems very much in the vein of Dark Souls, and in the vein, like, it feels like the Souls-like comic book, which that's the soundbite. I hate that I'm saying it.
That's okay with me.
I hate that's what we're talking about, but it feels kind of like the Souls-like comic book, where the character is moving through this world that is weird, and there's monsters, and the monsters are ginormous and seem insurmountable, and you are still progressing through the story. Was that an influence? Was that a thing, or is that just something you're thinking about? Yeah,
absolutely. It I feel no shame in talking about influences or being scared of being called that it's something. Like, I feel like you probably relate to that with the baboon.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like, you wear your influences on your sleeve, and I think not only does it show that the work is so good because you're willing to say that, not saying my work is good, but your work is good, but it also, as an artist, it allows you to come to terms, not a bad way, but to come to terms with that and go, oh, awesome. I know exactly where this is coming from. I know exactly how that made me feel and how I can portray that. And Bellringer comes from being a little kid, being obsessed with interdisciplinary stories. The easiest one for me to name is Bionicle. Like, Bionicle is a toy franchise.
Yeah.
Let's make this as deep as we possibly can, and let's make comics about it, and let's make websites about it, and let's make movies about it. And like Dark Crystal and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All of it's the same thing. I was obsessed with puppets as a kid. I wanted to be a puppeteer for a while. I wanted to be I also want to be like an architect and all these 10,000 different things. The second that Bell character, I drew him one time and I posted on my window. I just kind of kept looking at it and I went, damn, I can't write this. I'm going to have to draw it. And I could probably build it too. I just have to figure out how. And the feeling that I wanted from that was that loneliness of sort of what the Souls-like genre brings, along with the beauty and the drama. I love drama and storytelling when it's weighted correctly, because otherwise it's very it could be very Zack Snyder-esque where it loses feeling.
Well, you get into the melodrama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay too, because I do like Snyder.
Sure.
But I really, really like Dune.
Yeah.
Especially Denis Villeneuve's interpretation of it, where it is this very real feeling, very emotionally stable work where you know exactly how you're supposed to be feeling in each scene because everyone behind the camera is putting up so much of an effort. And I don't know if Bellringer conveys that, but because again, I sometimes worry about my inability to render things, but I'm trying to just do it without worrying too much.
Yeah.
And I want you to feel the loneliness, but also the weirdness. And hopefully you can almost hear music when you're reading it, but that's kind of how I feel.
So how have you evolved as an artist from page one to where are you now with the book?
I hope a lot better. I feel really good about that first like 30 pages in book one. And then I feel good about a lot of the second story and pieces of the third story. There are some parts in there where I'm going out of my comfort zone to the point where I think that I just bit off more than I can chew with what I can convey.
Yeah.
And then there are parts where I go, okay, that's the style that the book needs to be in. That's where I need to stay, especially in the second story in book one, the forest scenes where he's walking through the forest or moving through the forest, and it's lots of stagnant, large imagery, almost like an old illustrated book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I start arguing with myself, but is this a comic book if I'm really illustrating it that way? But also, is that okay? Because does it matter?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was that one page where like he's floating down the river or the stream, depending on how it is, and like you have the trees and the monster vine. And I was like, where are the wild things grow? Like that's where I was like kind of like in. I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome and everything. And so I'm trying to think of if I have actually a question. It's more of a statement.
Well, to this point, by issue 3 in the first book, the book that you sent us, by issue 3, you start using thicker line weights.
Yeah.
So this was me being like really technical. Do you get a Pentel brush pen? Is that is that what it was? Okay. I was like, I know those strokes. That's a Pentel brush pen.
I got a bunch of stuff. Like I started ordering more and more because I was so comfortable. Again, I call it like the back of my homework style. I'm so comfortable with a fine liner or with a regular pen and just kind of coloring in black.
Yeah.
And then I started to go, okay, well, I love Tombow brush pens.
Yeah.
And I really like the way brush can look, especially to convey the metal on the helm.
Yeah.
As I started drawing issue 2 and 3, I started looking at how many mistakes that I could make in drawing all those little details. And started going, I think I may leave him white and see how it looks and see how I feel about the super graphic pull of it. And I still, in the next book, book 2, the art is significantly stronger, I hope. I'm pretty happy with where it's at.
That's awesome.
And I think it comes from an experimentation with instruments.
Well, it's super commendable. I know we've talked to a couple of creators who, when you start a book at the beginning and then you get to book 3 or 4, when you've drawn 100 pages, the look of the book is just inevitably going to change because you have changed as an artist and you have gotten better. It's really commendable, I think, on your end to be like, this is how I was at page 1. This is how I am at page 120. Yes, it's changed.
Thank you.
this is a growth of an artist. This is the growth of who I am, and the conversation then becomes a little different, where it's like, I mean, behind me, I have like all of Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy does not start as the stark, like luscious line work that it becomes. He grows into it, and it's like 7 years, right? Most comic strips take about 7 years for it to like really come into its own and become its thing. So I think it's really commendable to like put stuff out and not sit around and wait for, you know, your ability to catch up to your storytelling, right? Or your because then that will never happen, right? You get, okay, this is my story, this is my ability. Let me wait till my ability's here. Well, the story's bad, so let me wait till it's here, and then you just keep stacking stuff up. It doesn't do anything, and it doesn't produce any art. And kudos to you for actually just being like, okay, I can write a thing and I can visualize it. Let me use something that I like is not my strong suit, and then build up to the thing in steps, and it's noticeable. I honestly, like every few pages reading the book, I recognize, okay, here's this new tool. Like I can see it because I'm very in the weeds on this kind of stuff, and I'm like, you know, I was like, oh, he got a Pentel. It was immediately when I was reading it, I went, oh, he got a Pentel brush pen. And like continued to read. And I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Kudos to you for like the ability and the want to add those things to it, right? You're not gonna go back and redraw stuff so it all matches. It's growth through it.
No, dude, thank you, because part of what I was thinking about when I was walking up and down the hill today, because again I was kind of sick this morning, and I was walking up and down the hill. I was like, okay, I just like to think. I like to think about process pretty much all the time anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm constantly thinking about it, and I have an exhibition opening this week, so I have to do a bunch of sculpting. I can't really draw, so I was thinking about this and this conversation, and one thing that I kept returning to was, it isn't that I'm necessarily insecure about some of the holes in my process. Like some of my lines aren't perfect, or I have little squiggles here and there, or some things I look at page-wise here and there and go, I don't like that. But if I take the time to redraw it, it's going to eat the next page, or it's going to eat 10 pages from now. And then I just go, whatever, drop it. Let's keep going and keep going. And if I have to fix it later, I can do some whiteout and I can do some editing here and there.
Sure.
Like there are some panels here and there that I'm not happy with in that first book. And then there are some panels where I go, you know what? I grabbed that brush and I just dipped it in India ink and I try. And actually, I'm actually kind of happy with that.
Yeah.
I think it comes from that little bit of, not saying that I'm fearless, but that little bit of fearlessness that I can have in being able to just make the book and put it out comes from sports. It just comes from just going after it. And if I fail, I fail. And then it comes from, I guess, writing, constantly revising work, and then realizing that being precious really doesn't add anything to productivity.
There's a element to writing that is all writing is editing, right? And in comics, you don't necessarily always get that luxury because it takes so much longer to draw. So you kind of just get comfortable with, this is not perfect, but this is serviceable, and then putting that out into the world. I know a lot of guys that get hung up on that element of it, and that's I guess that's my point. It's great.
It ate me up for a while, and it really ate me up, and that's why I think the first issue has a lot of detail compared to the latter couple, and maybe not necessarily detail in the way that it looks, because I think some of the composition and stuff in the second or third might look a little stronger. But in terms of the number of lines and the number of strokes on the page, there are a lot in that first issue. Every time I draw the main character, Aspero, he's just covered in little like wood lines to create texture. and it looks decent, but the shadow or the shading's never in the right place. It just kind of, and then eventually I started going, you know what? If this is just the most little bit off, it looks so weird. And it's nice to continue going and playing with things, because I employed a whole new other set of techniques in the next book and have just been studying so much in this last year since, I originally wanted to put out almost like 200 pages worth of material last year.
Yeah.
But then after IC3 and picking up a stack of books from everybody, and then going to Mocha the next day and picking up a stack, and then picking up stuff at like Desert Island, and I went all through Boston that same weekend, I took a step back and went, you know what? I'm going to give myself a little bit of time to figure out how that story is going to work and how I can kind of match the story to what I want to be learning at the time. So over the next 2 or 3 years, I can get better and tell the story better at the same rate.
Interesting.
You mentioned the word fearless. I want to chime in with like the word like willpower, because our story, like Jake and my story, kind of started December of 2023, where like you applied, I put you on the wait list, and then you're like, hey, if you can get me in, whatever. And I was like, hey, have you ever tabled before? And you're like, no, but you wrote me this nice letter right, like December 23rd, right before Christmas, and then you drew what your booth would look like, and I was so blown away by that, because that's anybody who puts like a little extra effort into something. I always like my eyes like, oh, this person is trying to get something there. Not trying to get something. This person is like trying to do something, and that motivation and that willpower like really blew me away. And I was like, dude, you have a table like immediately. It was, I don't care, like I'll figure it out.
That means so much to me.
But so then like you come to IC3. You don't have a working printing press, which I was very disappointed from. That was dramatic. I was very upset about that. But no, your booth looked pretty awesome. And then I'm just like following your journey from afar, and like you're like overseas promoting your book now and everything like that. Like, what is going on? I mean, like the past year has been pretty insane.
Yeah, I won't really be shy about the aspirations and kind of where I want to go. I don't see it being small. I don't, which is not small in a bad way, right? Small can be great. But I'm really, really going after everything that I can. And for instance, going after every single show that I can possibly get into. Like I did a ton of Zine Fest last year after IC3, because we sold really well at IC3. We sold a ton of books. And I realized, okay, the audience that I thought would love this the most, which is like the 13 to 26-year-old, mostly animators, people who really like television, was totally the audience that loved it. And I run like a draw your own Bell Night contest at the table where you just come by and you can draw your own character. And that brings so many people in. And I went to zine fairs, realized we're selling more and more and more at each subsequent fair, even though the attendance numbers are basically the same. Okay, cool. Our social following is basically non-existent. I mean, I was lucky this week, something pretty crazy happened. We jumped up in followers, but I had like 260 followers forever. But we're selling a ton of books and meeting a lot of great people. I took a step back after the spring and said, okay, well, I really want to go big with this. So we're going to kind of attack the largest shows we possibly can in the right categories, because there are certain things I'm not going to sell well at. Like San Diego Comic-Con, probably not. Large commercial, television, actor-centric stuff, we're not going to sell very well at. Fantasy shows, gaming shows, I thought we'd do well. I thought we'd do really well. And I really wanted to go to Thought Bubble because I just wanted to see what was going on overseas. And after emailing them a couple times back and forth, they didn't accept me, which is fine. Made more sense to not accept me. And I said, you know what? I'm still going to go. I'm still going to fly over and go to the show and try to get a bunch of books to take home. And then my fiance at the time, now wife, woke up one morning and goes, hey, what if we just get married while we're over there? So instead of staying for like a few days, we stayed for 2 weeks. And I bought so much work to study while we were there. realized that I desperately needed to get into more stuff like that. And kind of long story short, the whole year for me has been build as many models as possible and build like a whole on exhibition worth of sculptures, and then build book 1 to be stronger, because the original version I brought to IC3 was just the first 2 stories and had like just a plain white cover. So I kind of revamped the book, took my time on making sure the plot for the remaining 10 to 12 books was really solid, so that I knew exactly where I was headed, exactly what to hint at, and what to bring to the table with the end of book 3, book 2, et cetera, and then go, okay, well, by the time those books come out, where do I need to go? Where should I travel to? And I was really lucky to have to been in Utah for something kind of unrelated. And I realized that Brandon Sanderson, who's a huge fantasy author, if you're unfamiliar, he's like Kickstarter world record holder with $45 million. I went, oh my gosh, his headquarters is in Utah and I'm 30 minutes away. Yeah. I should build a wooden box with a doll in it and bring my zines to their headquarters and see if they'll let me into their show next year, because his biggest book, biggest New York Times bestseller of the year in fantasy, is supposed to debut at that show. Long story short, they actually let me in. So I took all those sculptures I built and drove them across the country in a van, debuted the new version of the book there, and it's just kind of going after it again and again and again. Yeah,
you hit the audience, right? You found the audience that wants that stuff. Like the Brandon Sanderson audience is your audience, right?
The fantasy, like the Hollow Knight, Dark Souls crowd, those people that are really hungry for that, the kind of thing that maybe they miss, or even the Jim Henson people, right? Like people, it's the dolls that mostly bring the attention, and then people look at the book and go, wait, I thought this was just a weird toy thing.
Weird display. Yeah. Well, you've done it in that way, right? Like the whole thing with comic books is constantly trying to find the audience outside of comic books, because the majority of people do not read comics, right? You're trying to find an audience outside of that. This is that's great. That's great.
Thank you.
What a good story. What are some of the books in over in Europe that you are finding and using as your inspiration and your leveling up?
All right, there are a couple really cool ones, and they might drop out of my head on the spot, but there is a book by an artist. I was walking down the street in Edinburgh, and my wife grabbed me and was like, oh, we should go into this bookshop, because there's so many bookshops over there. And we walked in, all books except for a tiny little section that were art books. And I picked one up that had a bird-faced or a woman-faced bird on the cover, all pencil drawn. The quality of the binding was outstanding, like just absolutely stunning. And I picked it up and went, this is probably a $50 book. And I turned it over, no ISBN, and I grabbed my wife Taylor, and I was like, she lives here, or she passed through.
Yeah.
Like she dropped it off at the shop. I really want this. So I grabbed it and another book or two that were next to it, and I read it. I could not stop. It actually wasn't a comic book. It was just an art book with these. Yeah. I think it's just called Bird Faces, and I read it so many times. M.A. Harrell, I believe is her name. Incredibly kind person, because I ended up seeing her at Thought Bubble.
Oh, cool.
The next week. Like, I read the book. I could not stop reading it. Yeah. We would just be, I don't know, in the car going somewhere, or I'd have it in my bag and open it up and go, God, this is so gorgeous. And we were walking through Thought Bubble because Dave Wachter, who lives in Pittsburgh, was there. I got to talk to him, and Chad Bleu was there, so I got to chat to him a little bit.
We are big fans of Chad.
Chad's awesome. So cool. And he was great, and like we had a really nice conversation about touring and getting after it, and ways to do things in a way that is unconventional to maybe people in comics typically see. Yeah. Had such an amazing conversation, and he was like, why are you here?
Yeah, that sounds like a Chad. It sounds like a Chad.
Yeah. And then I got to talk to Dave, and then as I got done talking with Dave, again, my lovely wife grabs me and goes, Jake, she's right there. And I was like, who's right there? who's right there? And I ran over, and then we bought a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. This is amazing.
What a freaking weird. I mean, that's great. That's crazy. It's crazy.
You know, I mean, it's art and finding, like, I have this thing with like music. If I go to a small venue and I like listen to like a new band and they're playing and they're decent, like I'm gonna be like friends for life with that band
Yeah.
because I was in that like little intimate setting, and like I have a whole bunch of obscure CDs of like bands people haven't heard of, but like I was in Chicago and there was a couple dive places like, oh, this is awesome and it's great. And the same thing, and it's part of the IC3 thing is that like being able to, you know, cross paths even for a day or two with all these amazing creators and to see all their art and have a few conversations and then be like, oh, and now I get to like watch where everybody's trajectory goes from there. And your trajectory has been so much fun to like follow and watch because you had that small little interaction and then you came to the show and like rocked it. You know, you took your opportunity, you rocked it, and now every other opportunity since then, you're like, oh, let's make it bigger and better and all these other things and stuff. And I'm really excited that maybe the 12-foot bell ringer might be at the show this year.
No, thank you. I would bring him if he fit in a car. But
that's wild.
Yeah, we ran into issues because I was supposed to actually bring a much larger setup to Dragonsteel Nexus in Utah. I built a whole immersive toy store with like overhanging things with Bell Knights that were going to be flying and stuff. But Amazon and FedEx and stuff get first right of refusal on vans. So little business tidbit, I had to completely repivot. The van we ordered did not work. And then we ended up having to get a minivan, and I had to shove that thing in a minivan and scrap the entire set that I built.
Oh,
but it was whatever. I was so happy to go that I didn't even care.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But Matt, like, honestly, most of this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have sent me that email back and said, you're in. Because I went out on a limb and sent you that stuff. And I remember sitting there at my drawing board going, I'm going to draw him this schematic and he might not like it. And this might be really freaking weird. And people might not do this kind of thing. But I typically like to just kind of, if the door's closed, I like to kind of just crack the handle as much as I can to just peek in and say, hey, I'm here. And the fact that you responded to me, because I remember drawing it and I have a very vivid memory of being very nervous sending that email. You getting back to me and letting me in that show. And first off, what a freaking show. What a blast. And I think that you've heard that over the last year from many, many people. But like I still correspond with a couple dozen people from that day nonstop where everybody's following each other and everybody's helping each other.
I mean, so awesome. It's so awesome.
It's crazy. That show started everything. It was such a great time. It was such a great day. And the fact that you worked so hard to get such a good crowd there that I sold like crazy. And it was you let me in. I sold really well because you worked your butt off to get all those people there. You set me up for success and I know you meant to do it, but I don't think that you realized the level of, I mean, my career got started because of that day.
Well, like, I think your career would have kept going without IC3. Like, I think you've got things going for yourself, and you. Like,
hey, Matt, take the compliment.
Take it.
Get out of here.
It's fine. It's fine. But no, I mean, I mean, it's one of those things. It's hard to like gauge that through emails, but like that's kind of my personality. Like, if somebody says, and this is at base level, like. If I go to like a show, like there was a few times I've gone to like shows and stuff like that, and I've seen like the VIP area, and they're like somebody was like a douchebag to me, and like, oh, this is the VIP area, you can't get in. I was like, you know what? Give me 5 minutes.
Hey, guess what?
I'm gonna with a clipboard, and I'm gonna get in that VIP room. So I mean, like it's like that whole point of like, and for me, like management, like I was, you know, a bartender, and the manager was like annoying, and I was like, you know what? I could do your job better than you. And the guy's like, well, prove it. And I was like, all right, well, I just applied for management now I got to do this. But it's like, whenever anybody tells me I can't do something, like it makes me want to do it all that more. Like it's what I need people to tell me. I was like, you know, like sometimes I tell my wife, just tell me I can't do something, and then I'm like, She's like, why? And I was like, you can do whatever you want. I was like, no, you tell me I can't do something. And then I'm like all razzed up. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go do it, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But that drive, man, is really important to have as a indie comic book creator. And again, like your crossover with the Makers Fair crowd and the fantasy crowd, like that's kudos to you. That like, because I was looking at a couple of your booth designs later on, I was like, I don't even see the comic book. Like I see everything else, and then it's like, oh, here's a little comic book in the corner, and like you not trap them, but you bring them in, you suck them into the world, and then you're like, and here's this comic book that goes with it and stuff. And like it's a really cool, interesting idea of like, you know, with marketing and selling and how as an indie creator you like create like a scene, you know, like to have all the other people, to have other people drawing your work. You know, I don't want to say it's a gimmick, but like as the gimmick,
it
and
is.
then you're able to put all that stuff on social media. Like you're building out a lot of different things that like really engage the audience, and
Thank you.
people should kind of talk to you and see what they can steal from you.
There's a great history of comics being toys, right? There's a great history of like, oh, this is G.I. Joe. Hey, this toy that you like, here's the comic book that goes to it. Hey, here's He-Man. Here's the toy that you like. Here's the comic that goes with it. And from an indie scene, making it yourself and being like, hey, here's this toy that you like. I've made these toys. Here's the comic that goes with it. Is really cool. It elevates, and it also is like enriched in the history of the medium, and that's super awesome.
No, thank you guys. It means a lot, and I think not coming from comics helped with it. Which, not that anybody can help that. It's just like where I came from.
Yeah,
because it comes from a sincerity of, I really wanted to make something. I think the most valuable level for me on a personal level, the most valuable layer to the whole thing is I wanted to make something that 11 or 12-year-old me and my friends, but if I was alone too, would never been able to get enough of. And it comes from Bionicle, even like Ugly Doll, and other kind of character-based franchises where as a kid, you can draw your own version of that super easy. You don't need any money. I can just go on the internet and look up Ugly Dolls, and I can draw my own Ugly Doll, and I can be completely immersed in it. And I wanted to have something where you can come to our booth and kind of draw and hang out and talk and engage with everything. You don't have to buy anything. You can just have fun and talk, and you can kind of be a part of it, especially if you have kids or if your kids are really interested in it. But then if you're interested and you want more and you want to dive into it, you can grab book one, and there are only a handful of Bell Knights in that first book. But in the second book, we start to explore a lot more of what the world looks like, a lot larger of a scope, because I have zines and stuff that also do that. But the sculpture, for instance, like I have an exhibition opening Friday at Waldo's and Company in Gettysburg, which is a really, really cool, really cool.
Good luck, man.
Thank you. And they've been amazing. Like I emailed him, honestly, partially because you were so accommodating and so awesome to me. They got the confidence to just start saying, you know what, maybe I'll just try. And I think part of the idea was, okay, if I can go into cool spaces, coffee shops, studios, maker spaces, and transform them into little Bell Knight invaded worlds with books for sale, it can be both an awesome thing for the community where they can come in, have fun, see these weird little dolls everywhere, and hopefully enjoy it, especially kids, but also get some book sales, get some stuff out there in a very unconventional way that if I was just drawing a book, I'd never be able to build like this guy who's chilling here.
Holy cow.
I would never be able to bring that to a botanic gardens for a gallery opening, but I can build my 12-foot tall guy and take it to Dragonsteel and have it be 6 feet over the booth heads with a banner, so that when you're on the other side of the hall, people go, "What's that?" And then they see it as a checkpoint and calling their friends going, "Yeah, we're at the Bellringer booth." it's been good.
That's crazy. And like, I don't know if you look behind me, like I have a ton of toys on my shelf and stuff. So I'm gonna need to like get a little bell ringer and
I'll just send you one.
Oh no, he'll just pick one up at IC3 on March 15th. What are we talking about? Hey, let's plug the show. We're at the end of our time, which is so sad. So sad.
It's been a great.
This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much. Really,
I left a dinner party for this, so I'm so glad that this conversation has ended the way it has. Let's go through our questions, our rapid fire questions. Get ready. Answer correctly. Answer quickly. Let's go.
They're all correct answers.
They're all correct answers. I misspoke. Question number 1.
Okay.
What are you bringing / premiering to IC3 this year?
I'm bringing Bellringer Book 1. I'm bringing in-print zines and then QR codes to get free zines and free stuff. Likely debuting Book 2. Really think we're going to debut Book 2, but there's a small chance that it's not going to be ready. But if I don't have Book 2 for sale, the first chunk of it in PDF will be available for free. So, yeah.
What a guy.
And then I'm also going to have teasers for another really special project that's drawn in silver point, if you're familiar with that. But
whoa. Changing up the mediums.
Yeah.
Well, let's segue into question number 2. What is the strange art tool that you grab for all the time?
Probably silver point now, because I
yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Are you a schedule or a feeling creator?
50-50. I think both are vital in very different ways. You know, I come from disciplined, wake up every day and lift extremely heavy, but also I come from writing where I would do a little bit of both. So I think it's both vital. It isn't about balance so much as it's, for me, about being really intuitive with what is needed at which times in a project's course.
Interesting. What is your proudest moment as a comic book creator?
I think my proudest moment is probably being at the last show we were at Dragonsteel and realizing, wow, this is absolutely insane, because this little girl has come back to my booth 12 times, has painted a half dozen Bell Knights in watercolor that she did in the hotel room last night and brought them to the freaking show to give them to us. And her dad was the best dad in the world. Sorry, it makes me kind of emotional. It was amazing. It was very overwhelming.
That's so cool.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Who is your biggest influence?
If I had to say one who, I'd probably say like a Spielberg or something, but I'm going to pivot and go Max Richter, who's a composer.
Great. Who's your favorite Disney princess?
This is a really hard question.
It is. That is the Matt Sardo question.
Oh my God. I love Tangled. Like, does she count? Does Rapunzel count? I'd say the Tangled version of Rapunzel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely. And the final question, what stories interest you?
I love stories with integrity, not because the author brought a certain integrity to the piece, but because when you read it, there's a level of empathy and understanding that can touch you so deeply that's basically real. It's not being told simply because it has to be told. It's not being told to get something out of you or to push something or to it's not being told out of anything other than this is something that interests me as an author. And there are different layers to that, but I don't know. I like that. I like something you can really bite your teeth on, whether it's in a casual way or in a I can sink into this for hours.
Interesting. Hemingway says this is a good story because it's a true story, and that's the case that it's a good story.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I like that.
Jake, this was like insanely awesome.
No, thank you so much. This was awesome. This was really, really cool. I've been excited to talk to you guys, and I've been very excited. It means the world that you like took the time to let me into IC3, that you took a chance on me way back when. Thank you for this. Thank you so much, because it's been a crazy week. it's been a really crazy couple days.
Well, you know what? You are. I'm gonna make a list, and you're number one on the hug list right now.
Ooh,
Just so you know,
that's a big list.
a big list.
I'll take it.
So when I see you, you're gonna get a big hug because that was the first IC3 was like I was hugging a lot of strange men like that weekend. I was like because there was so many people from the internet that we all knew through like COVID and the pandemic and everything like that, and then like just met everybody in person, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just giving everybody hugs and stuff like that. But like this year, I'm gonna be stingy with the hugs. I'm gonna make a list, and you're number one on the list.
I appreciate that. I'll take number one.